Okay, so one quick thing. A weird, Mandela effect thing happened to me. And Mandela effect, in case you don't know, is where you remember something being something. Like, you, for sure remember something being something. Like, 100% remember this thing being a certain thing. But then you come to find out you were wrong. You were completely wrong. So when I saw the trailer for this movie, it was through the eyes of my mother. And when I was watching the movie, I was pretty certain it was through the eyes of my mother. Like, I owned it. I had the case to it. And I'm sitting at a coffee shop, and I'm googling this movie. I'm looking it up on IMDb so I can learn these facts for you guys. And through the eyes of my mother is not a thing that exists. It's not real through the eyes of my mother. And I was a little dumbfounded because it was like, no, I saw this movie. I watched it yesterday, and then I googled it, and now it's the eyes of my mother. And I just want to know. I just want to know if I'm the only person that's happened to, because I'm pretty certain at some point in time this movie was through the eyes of my mother. So can someone please tell me if I'm crazy or not? That'd be awesome. The Eyes of My Mother was directed by Nicholas Pesce and it stars Kika Magalhaes. Welcome back to Underrated Flicks. This is my favorite one out of all the stuff that I do. I like this one a lot because I get to talk about stuff I don't normally get to talk about and stuff that you probably don't normally hear about. Let's do this again. So I saw the trailer for this movie a while ago, and I was absolutely infatuated with it. Because within the minute and 50 seconds that this trailer was, it showcased a lot of beautiful cinematography that I was super excited for. And then it was kind of just in the back of my cranium for probably a year until I went to the video store the other day and they just had it for $5. I didn't know it happened at all. I didn't know it came to theaters. I didn't know it existed yet. And then they had it for $5. I was like, yeah, I remember the trailer for that. Why not? So I watched it and I fucking loved it. I realized it doesn't deserve to get lost in the discount section of any movie store, just to be forever unseen. With a movie of this caliber making only $25,000 in revenue, I think I gotta put the word out on the streets about this one. The Eyes of My Mother tells the story of young Francisca living in rural America with her parents in an extremely secluded farmhouse, like Courage the Cowardly Dog secluded. Learning about surgery, the human anatomy, and death from her Portuguese eye surgeon mother, she becomes very well versed in how to do gross things to a body, and not in the fun way. Little Francisca experiences a traumatic, life-changing event caused by a creepy Woody Allen lookalike. This, mixed with her infatuation with anatomically fucking things up, causes her to grow up to be a totally not okay human being. Like Norman Bates not okay. And maybe she kills a couple folks. Who am I to say? Kika Magalhaes. Kika Magalhaes. Kika Magalhaes. I know for a fact that I'm not saying that right. So fuck off, YouTube commenters. Anyway, Kika plays adult Francesca in this movie. And I thought that maybe she was the one heavy hitter celebrity-wise in this cast. Surprisingly enough, this is her first lead role in a film, and it does not show at all. This character has to hold the movie together, which means that weight is on that actress's shoulders, and she carried it with stride. She was so gorgeous and innocent, yet so gruesome and bad, just bad to people. And it was extremely original to have a killer be this sympathetic. Granted, we have had serial killer protagonists before, but this was just a little bit different. Whether it be Dexter killing killers or Patrick Bateman killing assholes and just being fun to watch, Francesca had a weird innocence about her. And we knew as an audience that she just didn't know any other way of life. We can relate to her loneliness and understand why she's so fucked up, even though the things that she does are extremely fucked up and would normally be unforgivable. It's funny, I don't think I've read one article or seen one review of this film that didn't use the phrase fucked up, but really that's the only way to describe some of the scenes in this film. This, and the uniqueness of the character of Francesca, can be attributed to the writer-director Nicholas Pesce. Pretty sure. There's a lot of complicated names with this one. This was his very first feature film, and the directing felt very competent for a first-timer. This whole movie is meticulously thought out, and has faith in its audience not to be a bunch of dumbasses. There's this badass use of, jump cuts, where the human brain kind of fills in the dots, and that's what makes it great. It's honestly admirable that a film can show you an image, cut to something else, and after a second, make you go, oh no! It's funny because this film is getting a lot of really mixed reviews, and it's mostly because of the gore in it. But the funny thing is, a lot of the gore isn't really shown. And the same thing happened when Pulp Fiction came out. Everyone bashed it a bit for being a little too excessive in the violence department. But when you look back at Pulp Fiction, not a lot of violence is actually shown on screen. It's a lot of clever filmmaking to make you think you saw something that you really didn't. And directors have been doing this since like the 60s with Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. You know, you don't see that woman get stabbed, but you're pretty sure you saw that woman get stabbed. And Pesci made this in such a classical way. You know, one of his big inspirations for this movie was Night of the Hunter, which is another favorite of mine. Like, you can't go wrong with that movie. And this whole movie feels like it was made way before its time. And I mean that in a good way. Everything in this movie was made how it would have been made 50, 60 years ago. I also really need to mention the cinematographer on this, who ultimately helped achieve this goal. I feel like cinematographers are like the unsung heroes of movies. Like, you see their styles everywhere, but you don't really know it's them. And Zach Kupperstein, who is also a first-timer, did an amazing job. Very reminiscent of the recent The Witch, where, you know, it's just letting the camera sit and record what it needs to record. Every single frame in this film felt important. Every time a shot changed, you felt like this was crucial to the story, which can't be said for most movies now. Dude, I'm getting really tired of shaky cam. Like, I hate it. I hate shaky cam so much, and there was none in this. It's so much more effective when you just record what needs to be recorded, when you just let the shot happen instead of trying to mess with it too much. There are also quite a lot of really long shots in this film that don't really get full of themselves. It's very easy for a director to realize that he's doing something for a long time and kind of have little winks to the audience like, hey, look at this cool thing I'm doing. Whereas in The Eyes of My Mother, it just kind of happened. And it wasn't until like a little while after the shot started that I'm like, oh, I see what they're doing here. They're giving us a long one. And I'd get really happy. There's a lot of really fun things that this movie does. And yes, the film is in black and white, but it's not an artsy indie flick gimmick. It's used to portray the bleakness in Francesca's life, how everything is in black and white to her, that there's no moral gray area. Also looks really badass with the way Kupperstein uses the camera in this. I also want to quickly talk about the use of score in this film, or rather lack thereof. When it's there, it gives a very powerful presence. But what's even more powerful is when it's not. This movie really knows how to utilize the power of silence. You find so many modern day horror movies that have the score just be mindless ambience. But people oftentimes forget how scary a silent scene can be. Ultimately, I really don't have anything bad to say about this film. It's a unique hidden gem with a lot of talent and a visceral vision. I mean, really the only thing I can say against it is I don't really know what it's trying to say. Like, it's great, don't get me wrong. This is a beautifully made movie, extremely well crafted, but for what? There's not really a higher message here. There's nothing it's trying to convey to its audience. Sure, it takes a look at loneliness and what that can do to a person, but other than that, there's nothing it's really trying to say. Sure, not every movie needs to have some kind of moral behind it. Not every movie needs to have some kind of message or needs to say something. But with a movie this great, I just wish it had more of a voice, you know? Though it is a very different take on the horror genre, and it looks at what loneliness and sadness can do to a person, and how someone who's not exactly all there deals with all of those emotions. So I'm going to give The Eyes of My Mother a 9.5 out of 10. I'm not sure where you can find this. I have not seen it on Netflix or Hulu, but I feel like you will be able to eventually. But like I said, I found it for $5 at my local video rental store. If you have one, those are going obsolete. But I'm sure you can find it cheap somewhere. this movie's definitely worth a quick look. Yeah, thank you for watching. Go check out the Samurai Jack video because the new season of Samurai Jack is playing and it's pretty amazing. So if you want to catch up on Samurai Jack and like learn about him, I did a lot of research on the show. So please go watch that video. That'd be awesome. Anyway, as always, watch movies, my friends. What if the girl's mom like wasn't an eye surgeon? I feel like she wouldn't be as fucked up. Like, what if her mom was like a stand-up comedian? So like, instead of going out killing people, she would just tell jokes to people, and this movie wouldn't be as sad and gross. It wouldn't be the same movie, but I also kind of want to see the movie The Jokes of My Mother.